Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Don Marsh. In this segment, we're taking a closer look at those lime-colored bikes we're seeing all around St. Louis. They're part of the LimeBike bike share system and are being joined by yellow OFO bikes, a competing sharing system. We'll learn more about bike sharing, safety issues, and about courtesy between bike riders, auto drivers, and pedestrians. Joining me in studio are Kae Petrin, St. Louis Public Radio digital reporter. Taylor March is Advocacy and Education Manager for Trailnet, which promotes biking, walking, and the use of public transportation. Lori Winkler is an injury prevention nurse and Safe Kids St. Louis coordinator at Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital. Joining us by phone is Sam Sadle, Director of Strategic Development for the LimeBike Company. Thank you all so much for being here. Great to have you. Sam, thank you for joining us long distance. Sam, are
Glad
you
to be here.
Good. Let me begin with you. Give us some sense, if you would, as to how well the overall LimeBike program and system is working.
We've been very pleased with how the city of St. Louis has taken to the LimeBike network and the system. We're seeing people across the community riding bikes, everything from college students, high school students, to people in their 40s, 50s, and even people in their 70s. It's been, frankly, one of our strongest communities, and we've seen very quick uptake across the city. It's been wonderful.
And how many cities are these LimeBikes?
We're in over 60 communities across the country.
Do you have any kind of accident history that you've been able to compile in association with the LimeBikes in any or all of these communities?
Yes, we keep track of all accidents. Frankly, there have been really quite few. The bikes do not go as fast as sort of a typical road bike. They're also heavy bikes, so people tend to ride them in a very safe manner. Also, they're bright green, and people and drivers thankfully see them. And we found, for the most part, that we have very few accidents. It's really been quite good to see.
Well, you've also got some bright yellow bikes in our community now. How is that going to impact what you're doing, do you think?
We're excited that we're going to be able to continue to provide service in St. Louis, and that the city's taken to it so well. And clearly it's done so well that other companies have seen the value of the city, and we look forward. We partner with our competitors often on safety and training and parking initiatives, and I think we'll be able to do so as well in St. Louis.
I have noticed, and it's been pointed out by others, that in your ads on your internet site, that you show pictures of happy bike riders on those lime green bikes, but they're not wearing helmets.
Yeah, that is correct. We ask that all of our riders fulfill all the legal obligations of the community. We can provide helmets, and we're working with on-the-ground partners in St. Louis to do helmet giveaways and bicycle safety education. But we do not, given the state law, we do not require our adult riders, to utilize helmets. Those under 18 are required to use helmets.
Sam, stay with us. I'm going to talk to some of the other folks in the studio as well. Kae Petrin, let me turn to you with regard to the safety issue in the city. What are you hearing and what are you seeing with regard to bike riders in general?
So in general, people are pretty excited about seeing bike share on the road, but a lot of existing cyclists do have some concerns, particularly seeing so many new riders on the streets. A lot of sort of established riders aren't sure how the new riders are going to do suddenly hopping on a bike, and do they know how to shift gears if there's multiple gears on the bike? Do they know how to signal correctly and interact with cars? There's some concerns there. I also heard from the director of B-Works, which is a St. Louis organization that sort of provides bikes and bike safety training, that there are some concerns about whether or not St. Louis's infrastructure can really support having so many more bikes on the roads. There are a lot of roads that do have protected bike lanes, but a lot of other roads have sharrows, so you're mixing cars and bikes right in same lane, right alongside each other, and other streets that just don't have any bike infrastructure and don't even have good sidewalks. So there's a mix of concerns there. Other people are pretty optimistic about it and have seen that in other cities, getting so many more cyclists has really created a push towards getting some of these things that St. Louis doesn't have all over the city.
We have an email here from Charles, along with what you've just said, Kay, writing, I'd say that as long as I'm east of 270, I feel relatively safe. But when I venture into, say, Chesterfield, my comfort of riding in traffic goes away. The streets are not bike-friendly, and occasionally I even encounter someone who's clearly hostile toward a cyclist. So that kind of helps make your point. Lori, let me turn to you. I mean, this issue of safety and wearing of helmets and head injuries is something you're very close to. What do you want to say about that?
First and foremost, wearing a bike helmet can reduce the risk of a head injury by about 80%. 80 to 88%. So it is significant. And that's a traumatic brain injury, which the cyclist, whether it be an adult or a child, they can have some devastating long-term effects from that. As far as adults wearing their helmets, they serve as a role model for their child. And even though these statistics are prevalent, only about 45% of children will even wear a helmet. So trying to get that compliancy from the child when the adult doesn't wear that helmet is a major barrier, if you will. I will tell you, we were at an event at one point, and the dad came up and he was insisting that his child get a bike helmet fitted and given to him. And I said, well, where is your helmet? And he said, I don't need one. I have a hard head. And I was like, that's the wrong message that we're sending to our children. So I do feel that when children see what is expected behavior of their parents or an adult, that it's much more they're much more compliant and less resistant. Do you agree?
See that. Yeah, we see that in other countries as well. I know whenever Europe has kind of tried to implement more helmets on kids, because the developmental stages with children are very different than adults, and there's just a lot more risk involved. The parents play a pivotal role in that. I guess to counter that with other countries, though, what they found is that there's actually a decrease in overall ridership in countries where there's a lot of biking. So trying to kind of weigh those two things back and forth. But certainly for children, helmets are something that every parent should be encouraging.
Sam, is this something that your company could require beyond whatever municipalities might have rules regarding mandatory helmet wear? Could LimeBike make riders wear helmets?
At the moment, we do not require riders to use helmets, but I should say core to what we work for and partner with communities on is safe bicycling. It is helping people get where they need to go in a safe and effective and efficient manner. And so we recommend to all of our riders to utilize helmets, and we require those under 18 to utilize helmets. And this is really at the core of what we do, and we want to be able to partner to make sure that it's the safest way to get around town.
Is there, by any chance, a liability issue with your company with concern to safety?
We hold insurance for all of our bicycles, and we hope that, and we make sure that we do not see it as a liability issue, but we do have insurance in case of an accident.
Okay, what is the requirement here in St. Louis with regard to helmets? Do we have a mandatory helmet law?
So no. If you bike far enough out in the region, you might run into one that's, locally or for a small city or municipality that has their own rule. But in general, St. Louis does not have required helmet laws. For adults.
Yeah, for those under 18 in the city of St. Louis, they're required to wear helmets.
And what about Trailnet? What you encourage bicycling, obviously.
Yeah.
What about rules of the road and making sure that people know how to do it safely and effectively?
Yeah, Trailnet offers a variety of different classes over the course of the year. Most of our classes are focused on how to teach adults how to bike safely with traffic. That's kind of been our focus, since there's other organizations in the region that do a really great job of children's education, B-Works being one of them that was mentioned previously. Teaching people what the actual Missouri laws are is a huge component of that. A lot of people are not aware of it. When we go do kids education, an interesting thing to note is that a lot of kids, because we don't have education for kids related to driving, the only driver's education that most kids get is through their PE class for walking and biking.
Sam, do you have, as a company, have rules of the road per se?
Yes, we do. When people sign up to our service, we have education modules built into both our app as well as our website for people to learn the rules of the road and where to ride and how to safely ride. And we're partnering with Trailnet and others to help expand knowledge of those rules throughout the community.
And how about disposal of the bike once the trip is over?
As regards to parking, we also
Right.
work with. Sorry, you got me confused there with disposal.
Yeah.
As regards to parking, we have we ask that our riders look at some of our education materials, our parking materials, and that they park appropriately, and that means parking out of the right-of-way of both vehicular and pedestrian traffic. That means finding safe locations and bike racks and on very wide sidewalks in what's called the furniture zone. It's the space between the roadway and where people walk. And so we also, I should say, we supplement that with our team. We've got a team on the ground in St. Louis that drives around all day long, walks around as well, and is picking up bikes and is making sure they're properly parked in the right location so that when you walk out of your home, your office, your gym, wherever it may be, that the bicycle is upright, properly parked, and in the right location.
We have some people calling in who want to get into the conversation. Let's bring them in. We'll start with Keith, who is calling from St. Louis. Keith, thank you for waiting. You're on the air.
Hey, thank you for having me. I guess what prompted me to call was when I heard the concerns from cyclists about these new cyclists being out there. And I just kind of chuckled a little bit. As somebody that used to be a full-time cyclist, my only form of transportation when I was still physically able. Among the bike community, we were pretty vocal about demanding our rights on the road from other vehicles. But I also found it interesting. I was involved in 3 accidents, and they all involved other bicyclists not observing the rules of the road, for example, stopping for stop signs. Seems to be kind of a double standard there. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to comment. I kind of chuckled that the full-time cyclists seem to be concerned about new cyclists. I think it's great for new cyclists. I think it's great for St. Louis to finally embrace more sustainable transportation.
Tracy, you're nodding in affirmation of that. You want to comment on the comment?
Yeah, sure. Having more people on the roads is a great thing for biking in general. And it's just, what we've seen in other cities is actually as we see more people on bikes, the safety for everyone, not just those people biking, but also people walking and people driving increases because it kind of works to slow things down. With regards to cyclists breaking the law, I think we see there's been a couple of national studies done that show that cyclists break the law at about the same rate that drivers do. I think any of us that live in the city of St. Louis can tell you on a daily basis. You see somebody that breaks the law in a car, whether that's a speeding thing or rolling through a stop sign. The difference from what we've seen looking at different studies is what the intent is. And most of the time, whenever people get more experience with biking, there's a perception of, if I do this, then it'll make me safer. If I advance this light a little bit, if I run this light, I can get ahead of traffic, which is not the case. I mean, we have education work to do as a part of that, but I think that's an important thing to note.
And Taylor, I think I called you Tracy a moment ago. Forgive me for that.
That's all right.
But thank you for the comment. Kate?
And I'd like to add to that there was also a 2016 study specifically on bike share safety, and they found one of their theories was that new riders might actually be more safe overall because they are more cautious riders.
Yeah.
As Taylor's
As
saying.
we look at the national system, not just dockless bike sharing, which is what we're talking about with St. Louis, there's actually only been 2 fatalities in the U.S. With bike share systems. And I think a lot of that has to do with the new riders being exceptionally cautious. It's not something that they're used to. They're kind of paying more attention in some cases. But also the bikes are heavy. They're moving slowly. And that really helps to kind of keep things down.
And the wider tires as well. Just in general, one of the big problems for bicyclists, besides cars, is just the roads and potholes. And the bikes actually have wider tires, which make it less bad if you go over something that you're not expecting. So they think that they've been observing lower levels of just general injury for some of those reasons.
And the two systems that have launched in St. Louis actually have foam-filled tires or some kind of airless tire so that they don't actually puncture, which is good as well.
Lori, this is all music to your ears, I'm sure, because this is a concern that you have, is obviously bicycle safety. How often do you see bicycle accident head injuries?
I don't have the statistics as far as the specific injury, but I will tell you that last year at Cardinal Glennon, now this is not representative of all children being injured on a bicycle accident, but we saw approximately 53 children in our emergency room. What the severity of that injury, I don't have those specific statistics in front of me. Now, we also saw 42 children that were classified as pedestrians. So there may have been some information lacking as to whether or not they were walking their bike, if they were riding their bike, or whatever. But we do see significant traumatic brain injuries. I will tell you that most of our smaller children, those injuries occur not on the roadways. It's in the driveway. More times than not, I've heard parents say, I just let them ride down the driveway. Well, there's an incline on that driveway. He or she needs a helmet. The other issue that I see are cyclists, new parents that have that young child that they have the wagon. Is that what you call that? Okay. We didn't have those. Yeah, we didn't have those when my son was young. They're not putting helmets on those children's head. They need helmets. And we do have, there are toddler helmets available.
And children shouldn't go in those unless they're at least a year old and able to support the weight of the helmet on their head.
Right.
That's another thing that we see some is parents putting children that are much too young in those.
And the child, that baby, their head is the largest part on their body and their neck muscles are the weakest. So they do need to be able to support that helmet on their head.
A lot of people think that only falling a couple of feet, that it's not likely to be a serious injury, but that's wrong.
That is totally inaccurate. Yeah. You can fall from the top of a building and have a less severe injury than falling a couple of feet. Sure. Is that the most is that the most frequent occurring thing? Absolutely not. But it makes no difference.
Let's take another call. Nick in Webster Groves wants to join us. Let's bring him in. Nick, you're on the air.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm a little surprised that the gentleman from the bike company said that the contract was approved without requiring adults to wear helmets or have access to helmets. And it's just unbelievable. I'm highly confused that would ever go through. And the fact that he said he's in 60 communities across the country, he's probably had this conversation numerous times about the helmets. And it's all part of his advertising, and he just wants people to ride the bike so they can generate more money for their app and their bicycle company.
Let's get a response from Sam. Go ahead.
Well, yes, and as I said, we absolutely encourage everyone who utilizes LimeBike across the country to wear a helmet. When we're out there, we're out talking to people about safety, about getting people from location to location where they need to go in the most safe and efficient manner possible. And I think when we absolutely encourage everyone to use a helmet, and of course, in line with the laws of the state of Missouri, require anyone under 18 to wear a helmet as well.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I feel like I'm talking to a tobacco company. I mean, this is ridiculous, this conversation. The research that the other professionals just spoke about is overwhelming. Everybody should be wearing a helmet on these bicycles. I'm totally flabbergasted. You guys are even talking about this.
Sam, do you want to respond to that, sir?
I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I feel that, from as much of the research shows, the more people who are on bikes, the safer it is to ride a bike, to walk, and the fewer collisions that occur. And I think that by looking at our system, I think we're contributing positively to the mobility of the city of St. Louis, residents and visitors alike. And we do a lot of helmet giveaways and work with community groups on safe cycling, on helmet usage, and so I'd hope that if the caller is interested, we can provide him with a great helmet, and we can go forward from there. All
right. Well, let's move on to something else that I wanted to talk about. We don't have a whole lot of time left, and that's courtesy. I think that I've seen it, I've even experienced it, where there's a certain amount of road rage from time to time involving motorists and cyclists. Kae, do you want to take that on? I mean, that is an issue.
I've experienced that as a cyclist on occasion. I've heard from both drivers and cyclists that there's sort of mutual problems with everybody. Cyclists saying that people even threw things out of their car at them, told them to get off the road. Drivers saying that cyclists are just rolling past them at stop signs or red lights without stopping. Definitely some problems reported from both sides there. I think you can definitely argue, which problem is really worse, because obviously the cars have sort of the more likely to kill another person status in that back and forth, but there's definitely some issues on both sides.
I will add something. If people are throwing things out of a vehicle or verbally harassing people on bikes, St. Louis City has an anti-harassment ordinance specifically for this purpose, and people should feel empowered to call the police if that's the case. In regards to how people interact, I think there's certainly a need for courtesy on both sides. Yes. But I think that one of the things that we're seeing a shift in nationally, and we're also trying to get implemented in St. Louis, is a change from kind of the share the road signage, which research has shown kind of just empowers each group to believe what they think. People driving think, those people biking should get out of the way, and people biking thinks, I'm trying to share the road with you. And what's more effective is actually signs like they used in Ferguson, which say bikes may use full lane, change lanes to pass.
There's also an issue with regard to seeing bicyclists, if you will, if you're in a car. Sometimes there is that blind spot or two, which really makes it difficult and just exacerbates the situation. I guess it's just training, Taylor, that is necessary to make sure that people understand where they should be and when.
We need people who are kind of expecting to see people on bikes, and that's one of the reasons that we see as an increase in ridership in cities happens, safety in general happens, because the more people on bikes, the more people expect to see people on bikes or expect to see people walking. It's true of any mode. With that as well, though, there's a certain amount of positioning that can also be taught to people, specifically adults, in terms of where you place yourself on the roadway that can then highlight that visibility. If you're riding at night, you should have lights. Wearing retroreflective gear is a good idea, but we also want to make sure that as we highlight those things, those can help make a person more visible, but we're not doing that in a shaming manner.
And Sam, this is something that you can provide the bikes, but you can't provide these other things that we've just been talking about. Or can you?
Well, that's correct. We don't provide any sort of reflective gear, but we do, I should note, all of our bikes are equipped with both front and rear lights that activate whenever you ride the bike. And so we think that's very important, that having lights on the front and the back does increase visibility of riders, both during the day and, of course, particularly at night. Like many others, we're working at various ways that we can to encourage safe cycling and encourage effective and efficient use of the bicycle network.
I'm going to try to get one more call in. Let's bring in Sarah. It'll have to be quick, though, Sarah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to know what efforts are being made to improve infrastructure.
Such as?
Buffered bike lanes and just making infrastructure safer for LimeBike riders and all riders and walkers.
All right, Sarah. Do you have any read on that, Kae?
A little bit. The sense that I've gotten from the reporting I've done is that in St. Louis City, at least, most infrastructure improvements for cyclists are coming from individual ward budgets, so there's not really an overarching city program to be working on these things. So there will be some improvements, but it might only be through, the 22nd Ward's portion of that road. So some wards are moving towards those improvements and others aren't, and it can be kind of piecemeal throughout the city.
Well, we'll have to leave it at that. I think our time is up. Kae Petrin, thank you much for being with us. And Taylor Marsh, thank you from Trailnet for being with us. Lori Winkler from Cardinal Glennon, thank you. And Sam Sadle, thank you for joining us for this program. Archive versions of past St. Louis On the Air programs available for download or podcast at stlpublicradio.org/STL On Air. St. Louis On the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio 90.7 KWMU. Thank you for listening. I'm Don Marsh.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.